Could we speak about the brain and the mind? There's a lot of it. I'll read it briefly, twice, and I hope you will understand a rather long question. I haven't read it before. Could we speak about the brain and the mind? Thinking takes place materially in the brain cells. If thinking stops and there is perception without thought, what happens in the material brain? You seem to say, again, you seem to say that the mind has its place outside the brain. But where does the movement of pure perception take place, if not somewhere in the brain? And how is it possible for mutation to take place in the brain cells if pure perception has not connection in the brain? Have you understood the question? May I read it once more? It's a good question. So please listen to it. I'm listening to it too. Could we speak about the brain and the mind? Thinking takes place materially in the brain cells. That is, thinking is a material process. If thinking stops and there is perception without thought, what happens to the material brain? You seem to say that mind has its place outside the brain. But where does the movement of pure perception take place, if not somewhere in the brain? And how is it possible for mutation to take place in the brain cells if pure perception has not connection in the brain? Right. Have you got the question? So first he wants, the questioner says, differentiate, separate, distinguish and so on between the mind and the brain. And then he asks, if perception is purely outside the brain, which means thought is not the movement of perception. And he asks, if the perception takes place outside the brain, which is thinking process, remembering process, then what happens to the brain cells themselves, which are conditioned by the past? You follow? And will there be a mutation in the brain cells if perception is outside? Is this clear? Are you sure it's clear? So let's begin with the brain and the mind. The brain is a material function. It's a muscle, right? Like the heart, it has its, and the brain cells contain all memories. Please, I'm not a brain specialist, nor have I studied the experts, but I've lived a long time now, and I've watched a great deal. Not only the reaction of others, what they say, what they think, what they want to tell me, but also I've watched how the brain reacts You follow? And so on. I won't go into what my brain is. That's unimportant. I know you would like that, but that's unimportant. So the brain has evolved through time, right? From the most single cell, taking years, millions and millions of years, till it reached the ape, and go on another million years till it could stand, and so ultimately the human brain. The human brain is contained within the shell, within the skull, right? It's there. But it can go beyond itself, right? You can sit here and think of your country or your home, you're instantly there, right? In thought, you're not physically, you're here, but instantly you're in your home or in your faraway country. The brain has extraordinary capacity, right? Technology, see what it has done. The most extraordinary things they are doing. If you ask some of them, and fortunately or unfortunately, I meet them very often, they tell me all about it. So the brain has extraordinary capacity. That brain has been conditioned, right? That's so. By the limitation of language, not the language itself, but the limitation of language. You understand the difference? I won't go into it. It has been conditioned by the climate it lives, by the food it eats, by the food, by the social environment, the society in which it lives, and that society has been created by the brain. So that society is not different from the activities of the brain. I hope you're following all this. And 1,000 million years of experience, right? Millions of years of accumulated knowledge based on that experience, which is tradition. I am British, you are German, he's a Hindu, he's a black man, he's this, he's that. All the nationalistic division, which is tribal division, right? And the religious conditioning. So the brain is conditioned, right? And being conditioned, it is limited. The brain has extraordinary capacity, but it has been made, it has been conditioned and therefore limited, right? It is not limited in the technological world, right? Computers and so on. But it is very, very limited with regard to the psyche. Nobody, people have said, know yourself, from the Greeks, from the ancient Hindus and so on. They study the psyche in another. You understand? But they never study the psyche of themselves. The psychologists, the philosophers, the experts, they never study themselves. They study the rats, the rabbits, the pigeons, the monkeys, and so on, so on, so on. But they never say, I'm going to look at myself. I'm ambitious, I'm greedy, I'm envious, I compete with my neighbor, with my other scientists, I want better. You follow? It's the same psyche that has existed for thousands of years, though technologically you're a marvelous outside person. You understand? So inwardly we are very primitive. Right? So, the brain is limited, primitive, made in the world of the psyche. Now, can that limitation be broken down? You understand my question? Can that limitation, which is the self, the ego, the me, the self-centered concern, can all that be wiped away? Which means the brain then is unconditioned. You understand what I'm saying? Then it has no fear. Now most of us live in fear. Most of us are anxious, frightened of what's going to happen, frightened of death, you know, all the rest of it. Dozen things. Anxious. Can all that be completely be wiped away and be fresh? You understand? So that the brain is free. Then its relationship to the mind is entirely different. The mind, I must here say that we have discussed this matter, not that you must accept it. The speaker has discussed this matter with several scientists, top ones, not the local chaps who are government servants. And they won't go as far as the speaker has gone. Not, they go theoretically. You understand? But actually, you see the difference? That is to see that one has no shadow of the self. And that is extraordinarily arduous to see the me doesn't enter into any field. You understand what I'm saying? No? No, sir, no. The self hides in many ways under every stone. The self can hide in compassion. Going to India and looking after the poor people. Because the self then is attached to some idea, some faith, to some conclusion, some belief. You understand? Which makes me compassionate because I love Jesus or Christ. And I go up to hell. The self has many, many masks. You understand? The mask of meditation, the mask of achieving the highest, the mask that I am enlightened. I know what of which I speak of. You know, or this concern about humanity. That's another mask. So one has to be extraordinary, have subtle mind, quick mind, quick brain, not mind, to see where it is hiding. You understand this? Requires great attention. watching, watching, watching. You won't do all this. Probably you're all too lazy or too old, or to say, for God's sake, all this is not worth it. Let me alone. But if one really wants to go into this very deeply, one has to watch like a hawk. Every movement of thought, every movement of reaction. So the brain can be freed from its conditioning. I'm speaking, the speaker is speaking for himself, not for anybody else. He may be deceiving himself, right? He may be trying to pretend to be something or other. You understand? He may be. You don't know. So don't have great deal of skepticism, doubt, question, not what others say, yourself. So when there is no conditioning of the brain, it no longer degenerates, right? As you get older and older, perhaps not you, but people generally, they get older and older, their brain begins to wear out, they lose their memories, they behave in a most peculiar way. You know all that. Degeneration is not merely in America, jazz and vulgarity. Degeneration takes place in the brain first. And when the brain is completely free of the self and therefore no longer conditioned, then we can ask, we're now going to ask, not the brain, then what is the mind? The ancient Hindus, I've talked to some of the, I'm getting hot, aren't you? We've talked to some of the so-called learned people in India. They're learned, but they're not the actual reality. They're learned about what other people have said. They have inquired into the mind, right? And they have posited various statements. But wiping all that out, not depending on somebody, however ancient, however traditional, what is the mind? There is, according to Christian theory, Genesis, that man suddenly came into being at 4,500 BC. You know, which seems rather absurd, because at 4,500 BC, the ancient Egyptians invented calendar. You could look it up if you want to see what I'm saying is correct. But that invention must have come after tremendous search, inquiry of generation after generation. So there was a connection between India, Jerusalem, Israel, and Egypt at that time. I won't go into all that, I'm not a historian. So, what is the mind? I said Genesis is disorder out of chaos, out of that came order. Right? You know. You understand there are two things involved in it. Disorder has its own order, right? Are we clear on this? Trains don't run punctually, right? Day late, 2 hours late. If you're in the east, perhaps next day it comes. The engineer has gone to see his wife on the way and talk to some friends, take it leisurely. But that very leisurely, slack way has its order. It arrives tomorrow instead of today. At least it arrives. That's an order, right? Right? I don't know if you have watched. A cigarette smoke goes straight up, right? In a room where there is no draught, goes straight up, and after reaching a certain point, it goes off. In that going off, there is order. They are inquiring into this. It's not my business now. So, we live in disorder, right? Our brain functions in disorder. Our brain is constantly in conflict. Therefore, it is disorder. Such a brain cannot understand what the mind is. The mind can only be seen, not my mind or your brain or my brain, the mind. The mind that has created the universe. The mind that has created the cell. So that mind is pure energy and intelligence. You don't have to believe all this. So, that mind, when the brain is free, that mind can has a relationship to the brain. But if the brain is conditioned, it has no relationship. So, intelligence is the essence of that mind, not the intelligence of thought, not the intelligence of disorder, but is pure order, pure intelligence, and therefore it's pure compassion. And that mind has a relationship with the brain when it is free. Right? Now, I must go on. I could go into this, lots more into this, I won't. Aren't you getting tired, or you're listening? Are you listening to yourself, or are you just listening to me? Are you doing both? Then, are you watching your own reactions? How your brain works? That is action, reaction, back and forth, back and forth. Which means you are not listening. You're only listening when this action and reaction stops. Just pure listening. You understand? Are you following this? No, come on, sir, don't. Look, sir, the sea is in constant movement, right? Tide coming in, tide going out. This is its action. And the human beings are also in this action. Action, reaction. That reaction produces another reaction. That reaction in me produces another reaction, and so back and forth. Therefore, when there is that movement back and forth, there is no quietness, naturally. In that quietness, you can hear, right? The truth or the falseness. Not when you're back and forth, right? At least see intellectually, logically. If there is constant movement, you're not listening. How can you listen? But only when there is absolute silence you can listen. Right? See the logic of it. And is it possible to stop this movement back and forth? I say it is possible. The speaker says it's possible when you have studied yourself, when you have gone into yourself very, very deeply, understand yourself, then you can say the movement has really stopped. And the questioners ask, as the mind is outside the brain, the mind is not contained in the brain, but outside. We have discussed this, some scientists, they say yes, perhaps casually to please me, or theoretically they see it, but we're talking, the speaker is talking factually for himself, right? He may have a hole in his head, but so he says, how can this perception, which takes place only when there is no activity of thought, then how does the brain cells, which are a material process, bring about a mutation? That's the question, right? You heard the question, may I repeat? No, I don't have to repeat the whole question. So, look, keep it very simple. That's one of our difficulties. We never look at a complex thing very simply. Right? This is a very, very complex question. But one must begin very simply to understand something very vast. So, let's begin simply. Traditionally, you have pursued a certain path, right? Religiously, economically, socially, morally, and so on. A certain direction all your life. Suppose I have. You come along and say, look, that way, your way you're going leads nowhere. It'll bring you much more trouble. You'll keep everlastingly killing each other. You'll have tremendous economic difficulties, right? And he gives you logical reasons, examples, and so on. But you say, no, sorry, this is my way of doing things. And you keep going that way. Most people do, right? Most people do, 99% of the people keep that way, including the gurus, including the philosophers, including the newly achieved enlightened people. And you come along and say, look, that's a dangerous path, don't go there. Turn and go in another direction entirely, right? And you convince me, you show me the logic, the reason, the sanity of it. And I turn and go the totally different direction. What has taken place? You understand my question? I have been going in one direction all my life. You come along and say, don't go there, it's dangerous, it leads nowhere, you'll have more trouble, more aches, more problems. Go in another direction, things will be entirely different, right? And I accept your logic, your statements sanely, logically, you follow all that, and I move in another direction. What has happened to the brain? You understand? Keep it simple. Go in that direction, suddenly move in the other direction. The brain cells have themselves changed. You understand? I've broken the tradition. You follow this? You understand? It is as simple as that. But the tradition is so strong, so very, very, it has all its roots in my present existence. And you are asking me to do something which I rebel. Therefore, I'm not listening. You understand? But whereas I listen, find out what you are saying, if it is true or false. I want to know the truth of the matter. Not my wishes, my pleasures, but I want to know the truth of it. Therefore, I'm being serious, I listen with all my being. And I see you are quite right. I've moved, right? In that movement, there is a change in the brain cells. It's as simple as that. Have you got this? Some of, oh no, don't look so. Looks like if I'm a Catholic or a devout Hindu, practicing Catholic and so on, you come and tell me, look, don't be silly. All that's nonsense. They're just tradition, words without much meaning. Though the words have accumulated meaning. You understand? So, you say, point out, and I see what you say is the truth, I move. I'm free from that conditioning. Therefore, there is a change, mutation in the brain. Look, I have been brought up, we've all been brought up to live with fear. Right? We're all brought up. Not only fear of something, but fear. In it, I won't go into now what the nature of fear. And you tell me it can end. And instinctively I have to sit, let's go together, find out. Right? I want to find out if what you are saying is true or false, whether fear can really end. So I spend time, I discuss with you. I want to find out, learn. So my brain is active to find out. Not to be told what to do. So, moment I begin to inquire, look, watch the whole movement of fear. Then I accept it and say, well, I like to live in fear, or move away from it. When you see that, there is a change in the brain cells. It's so simple, if you could only look at this thing very simply. There is a mutation, to make it a little more complex, in the very brain cells, not through any effort, not through the will, or through any motive. When there is perception, perception is when there is observation without a movement of thought. Right? When there is absolute silence of memory, which is thought, which is thought. To look at something without the past. Do it, sir. Look at the speaker without all the remembrance that you have accumulated about him. Not his gestures, but watch him. Or watch your father, your mother, your husband, wife, girl, and so on. Doesn't matter what. Watch without any past remembrances and hurts and guilt and all that coming to be. Just to watch. then when you so watch, without any prejudice, then there's freedom from that which has been.